The question of questions, or why you should question things.
The Theosaurus Rex.
Greetings all, it is I, the Theosaurus Rex. It has been a rough set of past months for me, and as such I haven't been on nearly as much. However, I have been pretty active on Twitter, which you can follow me at St. Theosaurus Rex. That's at STTheosaurusRex, St. Theosaurus Rex. And I'll probably get into this a little more later on, what's been going on when I get into the second part of this. But for the first part of this, I wanted to get on the topic of questioning things, whether it be our individual faith, our beliefs, or just God in general. And this kind of came up when a friend of mine went on a number of dates with a girl who was part of a smaller denomination within the Protestant faith. And as they were chatting, my friend did some research on her denomination, and he found that there were some things that were very different than his beliefs. He asked her about those beliefs and what her thoughts were on them. She responded, and then he shared his differing beliefs. I don't know all the details of their conversation, but it ended with her being offended that he would choose to disagree strongly about something that she didn't see as very controversial, when they barely knew one another. Now, they had been going on at least a weekly date for the past quarter, I guess, past 3 to 4 months. So him and I spent a few hours, after she sent her last message, and talking about how she was offended at that, and talking about the issue that they were discussing, and I kind of helped him to solidify a couple of his thoughts on it. I questioned some of his beliefs, pushed him for rationals, poked some holes in a couple of them, some outright, and other times it was, yeah, I agree with your conclusion, but this has a flawed argument for it. Try using this one instead. And during my friends and mine interaction, we decided that while he may not have had the best way of presenting things, there were definitely some irreconcilable differences. She was born, raised, and educated in this denomination, and had told him that she believed everything the denomination believed, and didn't see a reason for questioning it. Now, this was an odd thing for both my friend and I. He goes to a church where he sees many of the pastor's beliefs as heretical. He goes to a cessationist Calvinist church, but appreciates the pastor's other sermons and loves the people there. I myself, as I've stated before, was raised by hippie parents who taught me to question everything and come to my own conclusions. In fact, my library at home has books ranging from Mark Driscoll to Rob Bell, C.S. Lewis to Joseph Prince, Charles Spurgeon to Sam Harris. Truth is a beautiful thing, and we should always accept it where it is. One of the things I loved so much about Velvet Elvis, which was Rob Bell's first book, is that he devotes an entire chapter to the idea of questioning. On page 31 of his book, he writes the following: "Central to the Christian experience is the art of questioning God. Not belligerent, arrogant questions that have no respect for our Maker, but naked, honest, vulnerable, raw questions, arising out of the awe that comes from engaging the living God." In this chapter, he explains many questions that heroes of our faith ask God. Understanding why we believe what we believe is a basic call to Christian life. And in 1 Peter 3:15, Peter writes, "Instead you must worship Christ as Lord of your life. And if someone asks you about the hope as a believer, always be ready to explain it." This is where the idea of apologetics is sourced to. Apologia is the Greek term that Peter uses, and it means to give a defense. And now this very quickly could have been where my friend was too strong in addressing things with her. He may have been a bit too quick to explain his beliefs and give a defense to it. Maybe he thought he knew what she was going to say and cut her off, or even let her finish but wasn't really listening because he was building a defense in his own mind. I know that I've been guilty of this, especially with people who give very, very basic and generic responses to things. Anyway, back to the idea of questioning. See, when it comes down to it, God isn't scared by our questions. He's big enough to handle our questions because, as Jesus said, he is the truth. All truth is found in Christ. Therefore, it doesn't matter if we question him about the truth, because eventually it will lead to him. I think for some reason, and I don't know where it came from, although I have some ideas, we have this idea that we aren't allowed to question God. We aren't allowed to question the church. We aren't allowed to question the teachings of our pastors or leaders. It may be as simple as a holdover from the Catholic tradition where you aren't allowed to question some, or even just a misunderstanding about what some believe faith is. And they say that it might be the, quote, belief without evidence, end quote. But wherever it came from, it's bad theology. Now, when I was growing up, ska was pretty popular amongst my circles. Ska, for those of y'all who don't know, is a mix between punk rock and swing, with a little rap sprinkled in. Popular ska bands back in the 90s and early 2000s were like the OC Supertones or the Orange County Supertones or the Insiders, and they both wore suits all the time, which was pretty cool. And then there was also Five Iron Frenzy, who stayed more with the punk, rebellious dress style. And the way they dressed was just because they were being like, counterculture in many ways. One of the things I loved about ska, aside from the cool dancing called skanking, which is pretty awesome, you should look it up, was about how the artists, especially Five Iron Frenzy, had lyrical depth. They weren't afraid to ask questions or state their struggles, and then like not have a concrete answer to it. It wasn't like, I'm at the bottom of a cliff, and I just know Jesus gonna save me. Right? It wasn't necessarily, I don't know of any song that's exactly like that, but just my point is that like it wasn't one of those things. Like, they weren't afraid to ask questions. Right? So in my favorite song in all of existence, Every New Day, which is by Five Iron, it has the lines in the live version that goes as such. Man versus himself, man versus machine, man versus the world, mankind versus me. The struggles go on, the wisdom I lack. The burdens keep piling up on my back. So hard to breathe, to take the next step. The mountain is high, I wait in the depths, yearning for grace and hoping for peace. Dear God, increase. In it, he doesn't have the answer to it. He just knows that he needs God's help, and he's asking for that. And it doesn't say that that God was going to rescue him immediately. In the song, it doesn't even say that God's going to rescue him. It's just that's his cry out, and I think that sort of that sincerity and that authenticity is really important, and especially next time when I talk about one of the reasons why I was thinking about this stuff. And then there was another song I was listening to prior to writing this. The OC Supertones write in their song Wilderness, quote, "The rain falls on the righteous and the wicked. Mine is not to reason why this is. In this I find my refuge, that my thoughts and ways are not his." Then he goes on the question. That's in the beginning of the song. Then he goes on the question during the bridge. God, do you really understand what it's like to be a man? Have you ever felt the weight of loving all the things you hate? Have you ever struggled? Have you ever worried? How can you sympathize? Then the writer goes on to quote Job. I've spoken too soon and put my hand over my mouth. I can't contend with you. End quote. I'm not saying this to be like, oh, well, back in the olden days, the music was so much better. We had lyrics that said something. Meh, 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 meh. But instead to say, maybe we need to be surrounded by people who ask questions, and who are authentic in their asking of questions. Maybe listening to music that wasn't afraid to state their doubt or questioning it was helpful to me as a kid, and then might be helpful to you. Right, one of the things I think was positive about this is they all came from a Christian worldview. Right, they came from that point of view where it was like, so God does exist and he is all powerful, so we're going to question him in this. Right, it wasn't a nihilistic view of things. It's well, how do you do this? I need to be able to trust with you. Anyway, that song kind of led me to something else, which was one of my favorite Numas by Rob Bell. In number 24, it's titled Whirlwind. In it, Rob takes about 2 to 3 minutes to give background on Job, then spends the remaining time reciting the questions that God asks Job. And God doesn't pull any punches. In Job 38:2, when God is beginning his questioning of Job, he states, "Who is this that questions my wisdom with such ignorant words?" Or if you, like me, prefer the Christian Standard Bible's translation of this, quote, "Why do you talk so much when you know so little?" Then in verse 3, God says, "Brace yourself like a man, because I have some questions for you, and you must answer them." See, we're absolutely free to question God, but in our freedom to question, we have to be prepared to be questioned ourselves. God just lays into Job. He asks 53 continuous questions, followed by a brief respite, then another 18 questions. During the respite, God asks Job if he still wants to argue with the Almighty, to which Job responds, I am unworthy. I put my hand over my mouth. Anyway, yeah. I think that's a good stopping point for now. Next time, I'll get into some of the questions I've been asking, some of the things I've been struggling with, and maybe I'll have some answers to help you out just as much. Who knows, though? I may not. I don't have all the answers. I'm just a lowly dinosaur with arms too short to cover my mouth, because that's the way T-Rexes are. Be sure to let me know what you think. I got my Twitter, at St. Theosaurus Rex. That's STTheosaurus Rex, R-E-X. You can hit me up on Facebook. I got a podcast, which is a lot like this one, but I changed out the outro and I added, I have pictures here, which is pretty cool. At anchor.fm/Theosaurus Rex. I try to keep a lot of the stuff together, but sometimes I do stuff over there, sometimes I do stuff over here. I think this one's even debuting on the Airsmudge thing. But the Theosaurus Rex, what is Airsmudge? That's a great question. I'm glad that you asked. I didn't really even know what Airsmudge was either. Anyway, but now I do. So anyway, here's what it is. Airsmudge is a group of people who do this kind of stuff for fun because it's a passion or whatever, and we're all creative people. And so some of us are good at making audio stuff. Some of us are good at marketing. Some of us are good at graphic design and stuff like that. And so we all work together to help one another out. If you're interested, or you're a young content creator or a young creator or new to the thing, even if you're an old person, it doesn't matter. You can go to Airsmudge. You can talk to us on Twitter or on Facebook. But anyway, Airsmudge, AIRSMUDGE. That's Airsmudge, at Airsmudge. And then while I'm here, a couple shout outs. If you'd like to hear more from the Theosaurus Rex, you can head to the Wax Museum. I guest host on there sometimes. You can learn more on their Twitter, at Wax Museum Pod. Or I'm a fairly regular co-host on ADD Masterminds. Totally different setup than any of these other guys. We've got a list of things, and we just kind of go through it. And maybe we spend 2 to 3 minutes on each topic, and it's bounce. It's pretty interesting, very different for a podcast. And you can go to ADD Masterminds, is our Twitter handle there. Other people of note, Bridge Levoit, which I believe is one word. Oh no, I had this all figured out. Let me go find out real quick. 1 second. I was going to have this not be such a terrible failure. Yes, Bridge Levoit, at Bridge Levoit, at BRIDGELIVWAT. Bridge Levoit. I do a lot of stuff with him over the course of all of our co-hosts. I co-host with him on the Wax Museum, ADD Masterminds, everything. Also, friend of the show, Jimmy from Table of Jimmy's, at Jimmy's Table of something. I have failed again. At least I remembered his name. You can go to at Table Jimmy's and follow him for some good stuff. He's got some pretty awesome podcasts going on, and so if you're interested in a lot of faith or just questions, and not necessarily faith type stuff, but coming from a Christian perspective, you definitely want to check him out. Same with Bridge Levoit. And there you go. Okay, cool. I think I'm going to end now. No real ASMR on my podcast. I did a little ASMR thing. Anyway, y'all have a wonderful day. Thank you for checking me out, and we'll go from there. Cool. Bye-bye.
The Theosaurus Rex.